Hello, everyone. You're listening to Voices of Science, echoes from the life science experts by RX Propellant. This is a podcast series which features key figures shaping the life science ecosystems in India with a focus on the technical and infrastructural needs of the life science community, investments, and environmental policies and considerations. I'm your host, Satesh Ragoo. Today's episode features a great friend and mentor of mine, Dr. Vasan Sambandamurthy, Senior Vice President of Bugworks. Together, we'll be talking about the role of the life science industry in treating with antimicrobial resistance. Vasan, as always, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Can you share a brief introduction of your profile for all listeners, please?
First of all, thank you so much, Satesh, for this opportunity. Thanks to you and RX Propellant. A quick background. I'm a microbiologist by training. I've spent over 20 years in academia as well as big pharma, worked for Novartis, Astra Zeneca, Biocon, and the recent past, I was the CEO of India Alliance, a funding agency. Currently, I'm very excited to be a part of Bugworks, a clinical stage company involved in the discovery of novel antibacterials to address the global challenge of antimicrobial resistance, as well as we work on developing new therapies for the treatment of hard to treat cancers.
The concept of antimicrobial resistance, commonly referred to as AMR, while extremely dire, is a concept that many persons are not familiar with. Can you briefly educate the audience on this concept and how widespread it is?
The concept of antimicrobial resistance, in short AMR, is very interesting and very relevant in the current context. As humanity is coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, we need to acknowledge and recognize that there is another silent pandemic that's brewing called AMR. AMR is a state wherein bacteria, fungi, viruses, and parasites develop resistance through a series of genetic changes to the drugs which are used to control the infection. And the class of drugs that are used to treat antimicrobial resistance are called antibiotics. So the discovery of antibiotics in the early 20th century is a turning point in human history. Antibiotics have truly revolutionized medicine in many respects, and countless lives have been saved. The extraordinary genetic capacities of microbes have benefited from human overuse and misuse of antibiotics. This excess use of antibiotics in a condition where there is no actual correlation of what is causing the disease has led to the exploitation of every source of resistant genes and every means of horizontal gene transfer to develop multiple mechanisms of resistance. So therefore, every antibiotic that was launched since the early 1940s, you see the emergence of resistance within a span of 5 to 10 years. And over a period of decades, the resistant mechanisms become so profound that the antibiotic which is intended to treat that particular disease is rendered useless. And to aggravate this problem, what happens is antibiotics are widely used in clinical medicine to treat diseases in humans. It's also used in agriculture as well as in the veterinary field.
Let's look a bit closer at the causes of this problem. Can you share your insights into the context in which AMR was first discovered and the factors which escalated it to what we see today?
Sure. So AMR typically occurs naturally over time through a series of genetic changes. Every living being has a genetic material. It could be DNA, it could be RNA, or a combination of both. So when there are some changes in the genetic material, organisms develop resistance. Antimicrobial resistant organisms are typically found in humans, animals, food, plants, and the environment, basically from soil, water, and air. And it is well known and documented that genetic resistance can spread from human to human. When someone is infected, they cough. It can immediately infect the person who is close by, or it can be transmitted between humans and animals. For example, the COVID-19, we all know that it was a zoonotic source. It jumped from an unknown reservoir, an animal, into humans. And many times you can also have AMR getting moved from food of animal origin to humans. So the successful use of any therapeutic agent is compromised by the potential development of tolerance or resistance to that drug from the time it is first employed. So this is true for agents used in the treatment of bacterial, fungal, parasitic, and viral infections, and for treatment of chronic diseases such as cancer and diabetes. So across the spectrum of diseases where an individual undergoes a prolonged treatment, you do see the emergence of resistance. It's a question of how soon does it develop. Bacteria being extremely smart and very fast dividing, typically the common bacteria can divide a bacterium becoming into two happens in 15 to 20 minutes, which means in a day they can multiply into millions of uh, progeny. So the emergence of resistance in bacteria and viruses are very rapid, unlike it happens in other chronic diseases.
As the life science industry experiences tremendous growth and investment today, with a greater interest placed on the sector as a solution to world health challenges, what role and responsibility can we as a community play in addressing the issue of AMR?
So who are the stakeholders in this AMR space, right? First, you have humans in the form of someone who is healthy. It could be patients. Then we have agriculture. Then we have veterinary science. So what happens is each and every one in this ecosystem is responsible for how we modulate, control, and address the global emergence of AMR. As individuals, the onus is on each one of us to refrain from taking antibiotics when it is not needed. Oftentimes, because of seasonal changes, as well as because of travel and other things, someone can come down with a sore throat or a cough or a running nose and fever. Unless we know for sure, unless it is ascertained or clearly proven that it is a bacterial cause, there is no point in taking antibiotics. So that's a first point of intervention wherein each one of us as responsible citizens avoid taking antibiotics, refrain from taking antibiotics unless a diagnostic test yields that a bacteria has been proven to be the causative agent. And in many cases, if it's a viral induced, there are no drugs and they are self-limiting. So first one is responsible human behavior. Second one is at the level of the pharmacy. In India, antibiotics are readily available over the counter. So it's a two-way process. As a customer, I go and ask for antibiotics. There should be a mechanism where the pharmacist says, sorry, I cannot give it to you unless you have a prescription. And second, there's also a tendency for a pharmacist to really sell antibiotics over the counter when someone comes saying that I have cold and fever. So that's a second point of intervention in terms of source. Bringing in legislation, bringing in control mechanisms to really keep antibiotic dispensing and selling under control. It can only be given under a prescription. This is the practice in the Western world, in the US, in Europe, and many other countries. So that's something which India is trying to adopt, and that's something which we should really force upon. The third piece is how do we regulate the use of antibiotics, excessive antibiotics in our agriculture? In this regard, the government of India has taken a few bold steps in terms of banning some of the most important life-saving antibiotics that have to be preserved for human use. So those things are coming under a restriction where they cannot be used for agriculture. The third piece is the veterinary piece, wherein in veterinary medicine, to really yield high yield of milk or to really get more meat, animals are indiscriminately fed with antibiotics. That is something which again has to be curbed. So this brings me to the concept of a one health intervention, which basically is an integrated approach wherein modulating how antibiotics are used in humans, agriculture, and veterinary science really shapes up how we are going to preserve life-saving antibiotics, which are very few in number. And this is something which is really going to shape up humanity.
Your company, Bugworks, is on a mission to specifically treat with the global disease burden resulting from AMR and cancer. Can you share a few words on the company's strides towards this goal?
Bugworks is a clinical stage company involved in the discovery of novel drugs to treat antimicrobial resistance, as well as novel therapies to treat hard to treat cancers. If I take a few minutes to explain our work in the AMR space, and there's been a lot of publication as well as new articles on what Bugworks is doing. In the AMR space, We believe we have a truly broad spectrum antibiotic, which basically kills a broad spectrum of bacteria. And this is truly a first in class antibiotic discovered after the last 50 years. And this drug, as of now, has gone through all the preclinical studies, safety, and now it is in phase one clinical trials in healthy volunteers. As we speak, the the phase one safety, tolerability, and pharmacokinetic study is happening in Australia in healthy volunteers. And we do have plans to take it forward. Once the phase one is completed, it will go through the clinical development into phase two and phase three, eventually expanding into multiple indications to treat life-threatening infections like complicated urinary tract infections. It could be complicated intra-abdominal infections. It could be bacterial pneumonias in multiple forms, as well as any other life-threatening bacterial disease. In the immuno-oncology space, we've been working for the last couple of years in terms of really understanding how metabolism plays an important role in modulating the immune response. So we are involved in a space called immuno-oncology, where we would like to unleash the human immune system to control the spread of cancer. So this we plan to do by using a set of novel small molecules, which will intervene or interfere in certain key metabolic pathways, which provide the cancer cells a niche to hide. So by unblocking this metabolic pathways or by inhibiting these pathways, we hope to leverage or unleash the full potential of the human immune system. So the immuno-oncology programs are in early or late discovery phase, and we are also employing real cutting-edge tools and building a lot of global partnerships to access the best know-how, technology, and expertise in progressing both our AMR research, the antibiotics, as well as in the immuno-oncology space. We are around 25 people with a lot of consultants, some of the best global talent in the world supporting our mission. So we have extensive partnership within India, across the world, both in terms of funding, in terms of accessing the best resources, the best technology platforms, as well as the best guidance in terms of taking our asset forward into clinical development and really developing medicines which we think will change or shape humanity.
Vasan, I sincerely thank you for joining us and sharing your great insights on antimicrobial resistance and what the life science community can do in treating with it. And thank you for listening, everyone. To know more about today's episode, please check out our description below or visit our website www.rxpropellant.in. Do join us again for another episode of Voices of Science by RX Propellant.